Welcome to Pray for Micah. And now your host, Micah Chrisman.
Hello, welcome to Pray for Micah podcast. The podcast, we are being prayed for by the Mormons today. Today the Mormons are praying for Micah because they know that, I'm into the polyamory, but not so much into into the rest of the religion. Just kidding. But yes, the Mormons are praying for Micah. So, hey, we're here with Nika Cotton today. I don't know if the Mormons are praying for you. I think they gave up.
They should have given up a long time ago.
They should have. Have you ever had a Mormon come knock on your door?
Jehovah's Witnesses mostly are who usually come knock on my door. There was a point actually that I just separated from my kid's dad and was just super lonely. And this Jehovah's Witness lady would keep coming to knock on my door. So I finally was just like, you just come inside and we can have a chat. And so every time she'd stop in, I'd be like, yep, come sit at the table and listen to me. So she was like my therapist for a few months.
Oh, that's nice.
It was cool. She would come every week. And I was like, yep, that's fine. You can come. We can have some tea and we can chat. I'll read your literature and everything. I just need a friend right now.
Wow.
So she was nice. Of course, she wanted me to come to church, and I never would come to church.
Sure.
I was just like, nope, you're just going to come here and talk to me because I'm lonely.
It takes some dedication to go knocking on people's doors.
Every week, yep. And I'm like, hey, stranger just showing up to my door. She was actually a really sweet lady, too. She was really nice and had, done a lot of stuff in life. And so it was fun when we were just, talking about life stuff. It always got kind of diverted back to, well, my church, we believe this and this and that.
Sure.
So, which is always the second thing about proselytizing is because it puts an extra layer in between, just being human with each other and just, supporting each other.
Right.
Through things. It's well, actually, I need you to fit into the standards of living, and then you'll be happier.
That's how it was when I had I guess he was RLDS. He wasn't pure, unadulterated Mormon. He was the kind of watered-down version of a Mormon. And, he would come to my youth group, and, my youth group was the one that was praying in tongues and shalabah, and he just was not having it. He was he came with me one time. We'd hang out and still play video games and stuff, but I definitely was his mission, to witness. And so, but he was my mission because I was like, oh man, you don't even know what it's like.
We're both going to bring you
over
to
the Spirit.
The other side.
You're going to get filled with the Spirit, and you're going to cast out this, Joseph Smith demons in you, and you're going to read the real Bible. And
oh, no.
And he was like, I'm going to show you the Mormon Bible and the book of the Articles of Covenant or whatever it is, the Pearl of Great Price. That's the other big book that they all read.
Oh, joy. Religion is a funny, funny thing that way, isn't it?
Everyone's got their sacred texts, and it just, at least some of the books in the Bible are a little older. The Book of Mormon, I feel like, is only, a couple hundred years old? It's American religion, basically.
Yep.
When an angel came to him. Oh, we won't bash on the Mormons. So if you're Mormon, we're sorry. We're sure you're good people. You apparently, Jehovah's Witness came and knocked on Nika's door.
Yes, and provided me months of free therapy.
Yeah, there's still the ability to have personal relationships and connection with people despite our religious differences.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this podcast is hopefully we can see our differences, set them aside, and still find mutual connection.
And I feel like a lot of ancient civilizations have, everybody's always developed their theories of what's beyond us. What we can see, why we're here. We all, since the beginning of human history, have developed these stories, right, about why we're here, to give some meaning and purpose to our lives. But I feel like usually societies develop these very earth-based and very authentic expressions, of ways to commune with spirit and with the divine. And so I feel like religion kind of takes some of that authenticity away, from the way that we commune with the divine sometimes. And it's sad in those ways, but it's good in the ways that it gives people hope for something, So
with the Enlightenment era, with the whole response to Darwinism and science, religion, Christianity in particular, was well, we need to make this book, these spiritual texts They need to now be like historical documents. They need to be scientific documents.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be like social contract documents about family and about, and like that's not at all how ancient Christians use these texts. You know, they didn't use them as this dictating text of like, oh, don't know what to do. Okay, I guess I'll go. You know, and we still share stories from the Bible as metaphor. But then Christians say, oh, no, it has to be literal. The earth was created in 6 days. Mm-hmm. So as a result, like, you know, I didn't know about anything other than creationist theory growing up, you know, because that was the only truth. And yet, oh, like, maybe there's room for my spiritual belief in a deity of a God, but I also evolved with all the other creatures on this planet. And maybe all of this was started somewhere else at the Big Bang or what have you.
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing about like being writers, because you're a writer and I'm a writer, is we can always create our own stories, you know, create our own theories about like why we are the way that we are. Like there's space to do that. I feel there's space to do that because you have to really personalize that. That can't be something that you just like accept it from this like social contract, right? That this is the way that my life is. Like, no, like maybe if the way that you feel diverges from that way, then you should be able to create another story.
I literally feel like I some ways grew closer to God from a core centered, like not necessarily towards like this deity, you know, but like this idea of God in me was even when I was rewriting my books, my fantasy series that I still haven't like republished the new version and try to get publishers, but yeah, it's all kind of always a perpetual work in progress. But like I changed like just the relationship dynamic between God and my book to my character, and like everything was always so black and white. Here are the villains, and just trying to like change it subtly, you know. I was sharing with Josh Casey, another person I've shared on this podcast with, like I went ahead and my book just like God is both the All Father and the All Mother, so they call them, you know, them the All One, and so they go by they them, you know, and just like this idea that God is genderless and just how like why does God you know,
you made God transgendered, Micah.
Right.
Pray for you.
Pray for me. But no, I don't know. Just like it really became beautiful. Like I think for some people, like we need God to be a mother to us. Sometimes we need God to be a father to us, a brother or sister, and just how far stretched it is to just be like, no, it's this nebulous entity that encapsulates the whole universe and somehow has a very distinct penis, you know. You know, like, right. That sounds patriarchy.
It has to stand up. Yep, it has to uphold the patriarchy.
But speaking of writing, you were talking about some of your writing, you know. I know you want to share a little bit about your books that you've written in the past.
Yeah, I write a lot of like poetry about love and stuff. I don't know. I really am inspired by like mystic poetry. Rumi, Kabir, Hafez. My poetry collection is called The Spirit of the Quest. There's a spiritual teacher's it's called Kabir. He's like a 18th century Middle Eastern prophet, right? And so there's all these like stories about him, and then and some of his writings, of course, are in like public record. And so it's available anywhere. You can just Google online and read most of his books because they're so ancient, the texts, and they're translated to so many different languages. But he has a quote from one of his teachings that says, "It's the spirit of the quest that helps, and I'm a slave of the spirit of the quest." So just the idea, like, it's not about, like, the destination of where you're going. It's about the spirit of the quest. Like, I'm a slave to that spirit, to that thing that kind of, drives me to go for something. And I loved that. I really, really liked it when I read it. I think I got the book for free on, like, my Kindle. You can get certain books for free that are really, really old books usually. And read it and was just completely in love with, like, the ideas and, kind of the philosophies. And so I wrote a lot of my poetry kind of in the same vein of mystic poets. It was fun. It was also very healing. And so I like how you talk about your writing process as bringing you as like a spiritual practice. You know, it's like that's your like authentic expression of connection with the divine is this writing practice, and it's unique to you, you know, because nobody can write what you write, right? And so I love that. I love making spiritual practices that are authentic and unique to me, that nobody else can express that, you know, spiritual practice. I don't have to proselytize it. I don't have to bring anybody else into my, you know, spiritual practice. It's just about me expressing authentically with the divine. So most of my poetry is that way. Some stuff I write just for, you know, because somebody asked me to write it. So it's not always that way, but typically it's just authentic expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got 2 of them out.
Yeah, I actually have 3 self-published poetry collections. The first 2 I published on blurb.com, which is like a self-publishing platform. And then the third one I published on Amazon. And when I published it, it was Amazon Create Space. Now it's like Kindle Direct Publishing. Yeah, is the name of the platform. So it's a really easy way to publish and like get ISBN number for your book and all of that in one place. It's pretty fun. And I'm working on a 4th one. So the first one is The Spirit of the Quest, Poetic Reflections on the Journey of a Soul. The second one is The Spirit of the Quest 2, Intensity's Slave. That's very intense here. And then the third one is Spirit of the Quest 3, For the Love of the Sky.
For the Love of the Sky.
For the Love of the Sky.
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
And then the 4th one I'm working on is The Spirit of the Quest 4, A Flower Blooms. So more about like kind of opening up and coming into yourself. You know, you think of the blooming of a flower, it's a very metaphorical, like kind of becoming what you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And you're kind of been working on that probably like not coincidentally, but you know, during the pandemic and stuff, like. Yeah,
I've been adding to it here and there. I've had this crazy writer's block. So I started a business, a tea and coffee shop about a year ago. And
what's it called?
Soulcentricity.
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 I already knew that. Just thought
I know. And it's been fun, but I feel like a lot of my creativity has been channeled into that instead, which it serves a lot of the same purpose. It is a very like authentic expression of myself to the world, you know. So I feel like it is very much like a poem or like this love, you know, this love being that I created.
That should have been a quote in the Kansas City Star article about you, like Nika Cotton. Soulcentricity is like a poem.
It is a poem to the world.
It's poetry to the people.
It is. And so a lot of my creative energy has gone into that, I think, and I've kind of taken a break from writing a bit, but I'm coming back to it a little more. I've been working on that 4th book, and then, which I've been working on that book for a few years, and I've just been kind of waiting around to publish it. And I feel like in a lot of ways, each of the books is sort of like a bookmark of a phase in my life. And so I feel like maybe this, 4th phase has kind of stretched out a little bit longer because I really have kind of come into my authentic expression of myself. And so I'll probably publish it like when I feel like I'm there. When I feel like I've bloomed, I've come to that authentic expression, and then I'll be ready to put that book out and then start on the next thing.
Well, don't wait too long. I know if I was kind of waiting for the same thing, I would never publish it because I'm like, I'm always growing. I'm never blooming.
Yeah, yeah. This is true. We're always growing and blooming. And it's always like a coming back to.
Yeah.
Of things, yeah. Because a lot of it has also been, just healing work. I feel like spirituality and healing work is kind of one and the same for me. And so a lot of even the process in my book has been me kind of doing some of my healing work, and then the poetry is very much reflecting some of those processes that I'm going through while I'm in the healing process. So yeah, I feel like I'm still doing like this process, this phase, and once this phase is over, then I'll kind of put that book out there and start on the next phase.
Start on the next healing phase.
I have been writing this. It's my first novel. It's called Memoirs of a Muse, and it's a fictitious memoir. And so it's my first attempt at actually writing like a novel that's not poetry, but it's in prose. And so it is like a series of poems, like each of the, snippets in the memoir is about like a different lover that this muse inspires and is inspired by and falls in love with. And so, but each one is very like poetic and, you know, kind of rhymey and a lot of alliteration and stuff. And so that's been fun. And I've been trying to just like do it whenever I feel kind of in love.
Like with yourself, people, the world?
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah, just feeling that.
Yeah, like I love with
life.
life. Yeah, just feeling that, like being in that space and then writing from that space.
I never thought about that. We always talk about being in love as like this phase that comes into us when we're with this, like, you know, the butterflies in the stomach relationship or something, but never think about just being in love, like, with life. Like, and I know that sounds cliche, but like having that same air of like, I'm in love. Oh, Micah, who are you in love with? Myself and my healing process and life. Does it have to be somebody? I'm just going to be single forever, okay? I'm in love. Just let me be in love. You know?
I mean, I think you can. And I think also you attract people when you have that feeling of like just being, you know, happy and content. And you attract like more of the right kinds of people, I think, when you're in that space. And I feel like that's always the space that I go to when I'm writing. Is this space of just like, you know, or when you hear a good love song or when you read a good love poem, you have that feeling, even though it's not geared towards somebody specifically. So that feeling is separate from being with somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can create that butterfly in the stomach effect without.
If you read a good poem, man, it will just feel like, yeah. There's so many good poems like that just make you feel that feeling. And songs.
Yeah. What's a song you've been listening to lately that, can you think of anything offhand, something that's been inspiring you lately?
I haven't listened to a lot of love songs. There's this song recently that I found. It's called Phenomenon. And it's by this artist. His name is Odie, O-D-I-E. I hadn't heard it before. It was like in my Spotify as like something you might like based on what you've listened to, which I love about Spotify, that you can always get introduced to new music.
Right.
But it's such a cool song. I like looked up the lyrics, like stopped, you know, my car once I got to the house, like put the song on repeat and looked up the lyrics while it was playing. Like, I gotta learn this song. This is just a beautiful song.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was cool. It's just about like, you know, there's a quote from the song where he's like, even though I'm here on earth, heaven is the place I'm worth. You know, it's just like this, it was just a feel-good song. I really liked it.
Yeah. Wow. What's it called again?
It's called Phenomenon.
Phenomenon.
And the artist is Odie, O-D-I-E.
Odie gets a shout out. Phenomenon. I'm all about, I don't have ads on this show yet, so, you know, I'm all about just giving free ad space to the artist or whoever's going to randomly come up in the episode, you know. There's a song I've been listening to called Better in the Morning, and I'm blanking on who the artist is.
Better in the Morning.
And it honestly is, it sounds kind of like a kind of Gaelic, Irishy kind of folk song. Pretty sure the band's not that. But I don't know. It's just one of those songs where even the lyrics don't quite make sense to me. He almost sounds angsty. He's like, kind of like, but it has like this such a beautiful melody, and it's so like, just, it's like the perfect song to like sing harmony to, or just like, so I literally have been like whistling and humming it while I walk.
That's cool. Yeah, I love those songs that you like make you feel kind of upbeat while you're exercising, going for a walk outside. But yeah.
But I just like the idea, the premise of like, I'll be better in the morning, you know? No matter how bad today may be.
You have to send me that later. For some reason my phone's not letting me search. It's like, nope, get off of me.
So yeah, notice last time you were here, you noticed my timeline of your life poster that I put on my door, and now we've got a good framing of it.
It's
kinda
so intense.
in the camera. Yeah, it's like a whole map out of like major milestones for the average human, of like the average age when you walk, the average age, like the peak fertility in men, women, average age for like becoming grandparents. And then you noticed actually, the like year 47 apparently is the year of most average unhappiness.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of, before we started the show, kind of Googling and looking
Like,
that
is that
up.
really a
Like,
thing?
why is that a thing? What did you find when you were Googling things? Did you find a reason why?
Yeah, I found lots of articles on it. So it's really a thing that a lot of people report. Like, these are studies that they've done where a lot of people will report that at 47 they felt their most unhappy. Like, even though, they had great careers and, things as far as success markers in their life were just fine, but they just felt so, like, discontent and unhappy with themselves. And some of the articles I read said it's because at that point people kind of start to realize, okay, this is it. Like, what I've done at this point in my life is what I'm going to do with my life. Where they, are looking toward, or they're getting close to 50. And so they're starting to feel that milestone of 50, like, hovering over them. Like, wow, I'm, getting old and getting to the place where I've done what I'm going to do with my life. And so a lot of people just are really, really unhappy at 47. I found that interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting.
Yeah. And kind of like a little bit sad because I'm like, man, like, we are not as unhappy as we're going to be, Micah.
You mean it gets worse?
It gets worse.
You mean there's more things that become dissatisfying in the future? Yeah, I appreciate, because you were saying, though, that the article said, like, people actually, the happiness picks back up in their 50s. So it's like, it's almost like we always think 50 is like, the midlife crisis, but it makes sense that, like, in the middle of that time frame, like before you hit 50, that's really when you start to, like, really wrestle with it. And again, these are averages, so some people maybe go through it later in life, some people earlier, but basically it comes to a point where, like, what is my life what's the summation of my life about,
It's like, what have I done with
and
my
this
life?
is who, and I feel that every day. There's just moments where I'm like, there's always that, like, I have to learn to be content with the here and now, because otherwise I'll never be enjoying the present.
Yeah.
But
I don't think if you live like that consistently, like, okay, accept this moment for what it is. Because I think a lot of that discontent was like people are feeling regret, for like, oh, like, I made it here to 47 and this is it. This is like what I've done, what I've accomplished is what I'm going to accomplish. It says people kind of give up on a lot of their dreams at that point too, because they're just like, oh, if I haven't published this great novel by now, it's not going to happen. Like, I've done all the stuff I'm going to do in the world. But it says by 50, people kind of start to accept, like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I've given to the world, and I can just move into being an elder and not want to give anything else. But I don't know. That just doesn't sit right with me. But I do like the idea, if you live in the moment all the time, if you're always taking advantage of this moment that you're in, you're never going to get to that point of regret, because you're just like, okay, I've lived. I've taken, every chance that I could take. I've done a lot of crazy things.
Oh, do tell. No.
I want to hear about all of them.
I want to hear about the crazy things, crazy Nika stories.
I love my online
I think
dating
we're doing pretty good for our
extravaganzas.
age as far as the adventures and things we've done.
We are. Yep.
You've got 2 beautiful kids. You're doing that adventure right now.
Yeah, and I look forward to 47 because that's 10 years from now, and like my youngest will be 19, and so he'll really be like a full adult and be out in the world. I'm like, that's when my life is gonna start, because I really won't have any responsibilities. I can like literally just pick up and do what I want to do. Like, I've never been on a cruise. I've never, done a lot of things.
Oh, you could do that stuff earlier. But you started a store. You started a tea shop in the middle of a pandemic with kids. Like, I think we'd be amazed at what, like, our capabilities are.
That's true. Yeah.
Like, it's always a surprise. But I think it does take intention, and that's the only thing that, like, unfortunately, it's hard to give attention and intention to things, like when you got so many things fighting for your attention.
Yeah, definitely.
Responsibilities, jobs, chores, all that stuff.
Yeah, it is rough.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't suspect you and I will be the type of people who will be like so dissatisfied with our lives. Like, there's so many people who just
can't imagine.
They don't even blink about their meaning, their purpose. They'll wake up every day and like, I work construction, I do this thing. And again, not to slam those jobs or whatever, but there's just folks who just like, I stopped growing the minute I got out of school. The minute I graduated high school, I stopped learning.
Yep. Where you just do the same thing from the time you graduate until the time that you retire.
I had a friend who told me, and I think it was probably one of the wisest things he said. His name's Tom. You know, Tom's a good friend, and he said that in his experience, people grow old the day they decide to stop learning. That basically, when they've decided, like, I kind of know what I'm gonna know. I don't really want to learn a new thing.
This is it.
And so I think even like people at the beginning of the pandemic who were like, I'm gonna work on learning a language, or I'm gonna, work on doing this and that. Oh, here comes a little motor vehicle or something. Hopefully it's not. Oh, it's just the neighbor on the lawnmower. But also, all the other sound effects are going on. For those who aren't on the video side of the podcast, the hookah bubbling noise you're hearing is the hookah. It's like, what are they doing? Are they smoking a bong? No, just hookah. Just Middle Eastern tobacco, the ancient of oldest of tobaccos.
It is ancient.
Yeah, Nika knows my struggles as far as like, I've quit smoking cigarettes. It's been like a 6-year, thing, and so I'm in my 3rd month now.
Good job.
Not buying cigarettes, and I still let myself smoke a hookah, but I was doing hookah and cigarettes, all of it, So I'm just like, one less smoking thing, and just try to like be intentional with each day. Like, I'm feeling the craving right now. Can I wait till dinner time? Can I wait till after dinner time before, smoke some of it tonight?
But I feel like hookah is also very much more intentional because you really got to prep it. It's really a process that you do. So it's more mindful, I feel like, than, cigarettes are so easy. Just like take one out of pack, smoke it, it's gone before you even thought about it. But
and then they just do it all day.
And do it all day,
and
yeah.
It's like every couple hours, an hour.
And you gotta, get some more coals and warm them up, and you gotta kind of tap the coals a little bit.
Definitely tastes better. This is a cashmere flavor we're smoking today.
It's a process. It's all about this process.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I'm 32 years old and just like realize, like, it only gets harder, addictions and stuff as you get older, and so I had to just start deciding, like, all right, I told myself I would quit before I was 30 when I was back in college, or when I was smoking after college, and now it's like coming down to the wire where you just, brass tacks have to, go after what you feel like is going to be healthier, walking my dog more, like, okay, I got an urge for something, okay, I'm going to go do something, work on my piano,
I love it.
Just try to fill up that energy, focus it somewhere else so it gets my mind off of, like, and I don't know, for me, like, I've always had eating problems with food. Food has always been a big comfort source, not just an energy source.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let me just eat some sugar about it. Let me just smoke about it,
Yeah, like triggers your brain. You like your reward system in your brain just kind of lights up.
And, I don't know, talking with my therapist, and, we don't focus so much about the addictions, but, she just shared some with me one day that I just kind of just never thought of it, but, like, how do you be your own comforter to yourself? Like, not, and, she didn't say not food, but that's how I started to kind of think of it, is like, how do I nurture the inner Micah without needing to feel like I need to have these things, outside things, to, like, nurture me and care for me. And so I figured it's better to build these practices now before I reach 47, because, the timeline of my life, it'll be the most happiest.
Your life. Time is ticking away.
Yeah. It's a good poster, just a good reminder, I feel like, just to, like, put things in perspective, like, hey, like, you only get this one life, this one shot to live. And even, like, when I went with some friends yesterday, we went cliff jumping in Stockton Lake, Missouri. It was just like, I'm like, the only thing that would make this better right now is a cigarette. And I just had that thought comes to my head every single time, like, the only thing that makes this better is just a cigarette. And I just had to stop and take a deep breath through my nose and smell the trees, smell the water, and just remind myself, like, that's not the truth. Like, I mean, it is the truth. Like, yeah, a cigarette would make it just that much a little bit better. But I'm here breathing and smelling this stuff, like this air, this oxygen, and I'm present with this nature, and so like
Mm-hmm.
I'm alive. Like
yes.
This is the best moment
Very
to
mindful.
be alive.
Yes.
Yeah, like and we just we take it so for granted so often, you know. So what makes you feel alive, Nika, on top of running a tea shop, doing your writing, hanging out with your kids? What are some things that make you feel alive?
Fall makes me feel alive. This is like my favorite season. I like everything about fall. I love like the smells of fall. I love pumpkin spice stuff. I love the colors of fall. I love the clothes. I have some boots I can't wait to wear and some sweaters.
I can't wait to get some fall clothes.
Yeah, there's something about fall that's just like magical for me. And part of it could just be like the transition of seasons. You know, it's one thing I like about living in the Midwest is we really get all 4 seasons. Sometimes in the same month, even.
Yeah, right.
Midwest weather. But I don't know. There's something about that transition to fall that I really, really enjoy. So being outside makes me feel alive. I've been listening to this. It's like an album that Deepak Chopra puts out with some of the mystic poetry of Rumi on it. And so he has like different poems by Rumi on this album. And then he has these little segments where he talks about different like mindful practices. And so one of them is surrender. And so I was like walking over to this waterfall at Cliff Drive Park yesterday and listening to like this segment about surrender. And, you know, which is a lot of what we were talking about mindfulness, like being in the moment is really like being in this state of surrender and of just like being in love with what's happening right now and kind of like giving up all of your like preconceived notions about things or your expectations that things will be any certain way and just kind of like surrendering to how things are right now. So, and it was really, really cool. It's like surrender to this experience and like notice things. And so like I noticed like the spider webs, like I was telling you, you know, there's like these spider webs that were going across the path, or like this one web. It was just a string that was going across the path. So I think probably a spider web had like woven its string to go weave its web somewhere else, like connected it to something. And, you know, initially wanting to kind of duck underneath the spider web, but being like, okay, well, maybe this is a blessing. Why don't I just go through the spider web? What's going to happen if I just like walk through the spider web and the spider web is on my head? And then what? And so kind of just like did that and felt it and experienced it. And I was like, okay, maybe this is a blessing. Maybe this thing that I thought is a really scary thing. And, you know, usually if you hit a spider web, you kind of just like rub it off, you know, and
right.
you're like, it's like uncomfortable,
gross,
but why? Yeah,
right.
It's not that gross. It's just like, it's actually a beautiful thing. Spider webs have a lot of like just sacred geometry and symbolism in them. And it's really like a miracle if you think about it. They can just like weave these little structures to catch stuff in. It's beautiful. And so if you're like in the moment and observing things, I feel like you can have those experiences with stuff. Whereas as opposed to, you know, I feel like I overthink everything. You know, just like overprocess all these things and create these bad experiences from your thoughts when you can just kind of surrender to the moment. Just be
with the spider webs.
Just be with the spider webs in nature.
I wrote for fun, like for me, I don't really write poetry like you do, and like lots of.
I like your poems.
Yeah, I like to write them but like, you know, it'll just hit me when like it's just kind of like this burst of just an idea or a concept, and I just have to write it mainly just to put it out and put it down, you know, on paper. But it doesn't come to me very often. Usually, like my writing comes when like I'm thinking of characters, I'm thinking of storyline, and I'm like, I'm gonna go work on writing this scene that I've been working on. But I wrote during the pandemic a poem about a spider because I was like in my bathroom. Yeah, I think I just posted on like Facebook or something. Cool. And I can't quote it for you. I can't remember it all, but it was just a moment that hit me. You know, I was like in the shower and saw this little spider in my tub that I was like, normally in the past I would have just been like, oh, let me point the shower head and wash it down and kill it. And I don't know, it was just one of those moments of like just showing mercy, like I'm gonna help this thing out, and you know, I'm just gonna let it live. And then for like weeks it was just setting up its web in my bathroom in different spots, and it was just like this one like little spider with long little legs, and I don't know, it was like I don't even know what it was catching in there, you know. I'm like, what bugs are I don't know what you're like living on in there.
In your house.
Right. But it was just, I don't know, this moment of just thinking about me and the spider are no different. We're all just trying to survive. It was just a moment of like,
that's cool.
and like the world, I don't know, the metaphor of the poem was just thinking about how the world's like this bathtub, and we can set our energy to just wash it down, let the world spiral us out, you know. But moments of grace, maybe we could just spin our web above it, you know.
Yeah, I love this.
I also took the same approach with cockroach problem, and now I have a cockroach problem. No, no. So there is a point where you have to like, this is my home, and you're invading my space. I can't create a whole ecosystem inside my house, you know, even though they're kind of boundaries. Yeah, like, hey, you know, like at first I thought we had a symbiotic relationship. Like, you know, the roaches will just like eat the scraps or crumbs I drop on the floor, but like. Suddenly you turn on the light and there's like 30 of them. You're like, oh, I need to call
an exterminator.
An exterminator. We gotta get, you know, you gotta go set up home somewhere else. Sorry, you know, you and your
no poems for cockroaches, Micah.
No poems for cockroaches. I am prejudiced to certain bugs. Like I have certain bug preferences.
There's a poem you wrote. I remember. I thought about it recently. I think it may have been a poem to your grandmother, or it was a poem you entered into a contest. Where it's like the years are whispering, we are coming.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually published that in the Kansas City Voices magazine. Yeah.
I really, really liked that poem.
Yeah, that was like a poem just kind of sharing a lot of little snapshots of my childhood and just growing up on the farm with my family and my sisters and my brother and jumping on hay bales and mudsliding and just all the while, the years, the months are singing, we are coming, we are coming, we are here, you know. Yeah. And so just this kind of mantra of like, you know, it's the passing of time and kind of death, but like, you know, at some point we all will sing together. That's kind of how the poem concludes. Like, we are here, you know.
Brings us back to the timeline of your life.
Yeah, the timeline of your life. You'll get to the end and you'll realize we are here, you know. We've arrived.
It is inevitable.
It is inevitable. And yet what we do with ourselves, with people, the sacredness of the journey, it's all kind of the point of it all. But, you know, there's some moments to just, breathe in that hay bale.
Yeah,
you know,
enjoy
air
those moments.
Yeah, being present with it. I really liked what you shared about being present with yourself on the walk and just I don't know, there's just sacredness in that. It feels so tedious sometimes to like,
it's hard to stay.
All right, I'm frustrated and angry, you know, I don't want to breathe right now. I don't want to be present, and it just inevitably always does something soothing to the mind to just do that.
Yeah, cultivating that awareness of the moment. Or even just like appreciating, like how you could appreciate like the smell of the hay bales and the jumping on the hay bales, you know.
Right.
Enough to remember it now. Like you remember those details. I feel like that's the stuff that we keep, you know, once we get to the 47, the unhappy age is like those moments that we remember. Like if we keep doing that, then we're going to definitely cultivate something that's a little happier in the future moment if like we're being aware right now in this moment.
Yeah. Well, just curious, you know, for our guests and stuff who don't know you, you know, you grew up in KCK.
I did. Grew up in Wyandotte County, KCK girl.
So what are some of the memories that come to your mind, like just off the top of your head? You know, don't have to be the romanticized.
Burying pets in the backyard.
Wait, you did that too?
Yes.
We would totally,
Everybody
animals die on the
memories.
farm. We always have to bury them on the farm.
Yeah. Which I guess is like, you know, somewhat of a beautiful symbolism of like being one with death. Not really. It was always really sad to bury. Mostly guinea pigs.
Mostly.
That are buried in our backyard. Yeah. I don't know, like playing with the neighbors. I have a lot of those memories of like riding bikes around. We had a dog and a cat. So lots of memories of pets. I feel like we spent a lot of time outside that I remember, like just running around the neighborhood. Not very much supervision, which is funny having kids now because I feel like I'm constantly like watching them. Like I was how my childhood was. We were just like free, a little freer. So I don't know. Things have changed though, quite a bit. But yeah, lots of fun, good memories of being a kid and just like creating stuff and using mud and sticks to just make up things, making up games and being creative. We didn't have electronics. We had like one of those big computers, but it was like a dial-up where you had to like put in the CD and dial up the internet and wait. Yeah. Like CD-ROM. It was, So we really weren't tuned into electronics as much. We had like little handheld, games and stuff. But yeah, those are fun times.
Yeah. Gosh, so I read some recently, something that's unique to us as being in the millennial generation, now that most millennials are like, I think they're late 20s, kind of 34, 35, and we're growing up. But what's interesting about our generation is we literally witnessed that major gap shift of like between the technological explosion.
That's true. Yeah.
Like the phones in our pockets now.
Yep.
Have more technological advancements than like astronauts did when they went to the moon. And you and I like grew up like having the Atari video games, like watching AOL chat rooms and all that.
Yeah.
No social media, no Facebook yet, and we witnessed that. And so we're like in this weird, not weird, but just like transitional period. We're like. Younger kid generations, like that's all they're gonna know.
Yeah,
they're just gonna know that there's social media. Pick and choose, Snapchat, TikTok, but then always having access to just like a phone or a tablet. And so I always have this like feeling that my parents I think had, or probably our parents had, is just like go play outside, like don't watch TV, like And I always, was annoyed by that. I mean, I loved playing outside, so don't get me wrong. But, like, once we had a Super Nintendo and I'm playing it for hours, Mom's like, you've been playing that enough. Go play outside. It's like, what? But I'm I'm trying to beat Donkey Kong, And now I see, though, the like, man, if I have kids one day, am I going to be like, you should just... throw a tablet in their hand, like the new babysitter, like
it is.
Here's a tablet, like just watch yourself, and now I'm almost like, well, what kind of parent will I be? Will I be like, no, you can't get that chip planted in your head?
I'm like, I want this new
like
chip.
just be happy with your video game virtual reality headset thing, like your glasses.
Where I can just blink my eyes and make whatever video game come real into my life, and
right.
Who knows?
The future is going to be really weird.
It is, because can you imagine? I mean, and if you think about, there's pandemics every 100 years, but this is the first pandemic where we've still been this connected with one another, outside of our sheltering at home. Even when you're sheltering at home, you're still connected with like millions of people all over the world. And it's the first time anything like that has happened for us. And so I wonder what that is going to do to like human like evolution, to the way we evolve socially, that like this is the first pandemic that didn't really take us away from one another. And we see that even in this pandemic, through all the like social movements, this last election here in the US, and is the first time I remember seeing like people in France protesting for Black Lives Matter, for the movement.
Wow.
And so imagine what that technology has done to social movements and the ways that we're connected with one another. That's powerful. That's like a really powerful shift that's happening. So I'm kind of excited. I think, having this pandemic as the moment for us to stand still. Who knows how long this is going to go. But if we're in the moment for the whole thing, then we'll be okay. But it's going to be exciting to see what we become on the other side of this. Right. Just from a sociological perspective, the ways that it's like changing and adapting us. It will be interesting. Like maybe we will finally conquer pandemics. Like maybe this will be the last pandemic in human history, like that would be, I mean, I won't be here in 100 years to see, but that would be awesome.
When we have the perfect vaccine, there'll be no haters about it. You know? Wait, yeah, probably not. There'll always be the skeptics. You know?
Lots of people. Yeah.
Well, that's what's interesting. Like, you know, there's like medical sciences that have to advance, but then how that's merging with technological advancements. So, like, literally, Elon Musk and them have like created this thing called Neuralink. Have you heard of Neuralink?
No, what is this?
So, Neuralink is basically a chip that they can attach to your, you know, and I don't know all the specifics about it, but it attaches into your like cerebral cortex, like your spine. Yeah, it's the mark of the beast. It's always, when in doubt, it's probably the mark of the beast. It's probably the mark of the beast. But theoretically, like, if you are experiencing, like, if you are a person who has epileptic seizures, and there's like a neurological like misfiring happening in your brain, this thing will be able to like detect it and send like a counter pulse, like counter shock, to like neutralize you from having a seizure. Cool. Theoretically, and you know, again, it's all kind of still prototype. Like, they've put it in pigs. Like, they haven't started totally doing it on humans yet. But theoretically, like, if you have like nerve damage and you have lost your eyesight, this thing could potentially repair nerve damage and repair eyesight and different things. And like it's literally the first step, like, in his belief system. Like, his kind of thoughts are, we're already cyborgs. Like, we already are like humans that like heavily revolve, like you're saying, even in the pandemic, right? We're using our phones, our technology, like they're already extensions of ourselves. How we schedule our days and how we communicate with people. But the connective difference between our brain to our thumbs is slow, right? Like, to that interface is the hiccup in his mind. And rather than, like, his belief is like, rather than getting AI, like artificial intelligence, to do everything for us, like, eventually we need to be able, as humans, be able to interface with AI, like, be able to plug in. So it's literally like Matrix shit. Like, it's literally like, this Neuralink is probably like the first step to being able to, like you're saying, one day I can just blink a certain code, you know, and have it be able to plug into a computer interface.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, it'll develop brain capacity even. Like, he says, like, the promise of this thing is like, you'll be able to, like, maybe even read faster, retain knowledge better. Like, just some really sci-fi kind of scary shit that, like, I don't know if it would make, like, that's what I find interesting is like on the one hand, like, I studied like social movement rhetoric. Like, I studied Ferguson and Black Lives Matter, and how like social media and those images of hands up, don't shoot, I can't breathe, how they like led into like spawning like this social movement of Black Lives Matter was like this evolution of different hubs and pockets of like major stories. Like, we've been talking about, the story is what moves people toward action.
Yeah.
And so in the one sense, like, social media and all these things have created like solutions to like raise awareness, elevate issues, you know? And at the same time, it's creating like social disconnection. Like, there's all sorts of studies that are like, people are having trouble communicating like on a one-on-one. So like, that's where like you and I as millennials have like more of an advantage, right? Like, we were forced to have to talk to adults, interact with other kids more on a face-to-face basis, and play outside without technology, you know, like, we have both, best of both worlds kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of concern for like younger generations that they'll go and try to build relationships and different things, and they'll always have this like Instagram idealistic expectations of like what a person looks like, what are perfect features, like these filter apps that you can take a picture with yourself and it changes the, you know, your facial structure just slightly, brings it a little more, and that's what people's perceptions of themselves can be distorted.
Interesting.
So I don't know. I think like, yeah, we can use Zoom and connect with family and people that the pandemic, you know, we were cut off from them. And yet, what will the future look like if that's how humans interact permanently?
Yeah, that's like the downside to technology. Right. It's like, what do you sacrifice for these, you know, advantages?
Right.
That you get.
It's always a double-edged sword.
It is, yeah, very much double-edged sword. That's interesting. I'd like to think overall connection is a good thing. though, because it makes us realize, especially in a pandemic, like how much we are connected together. So when somebody in China gets a disease, you know, it affects everybody in the world. Like we really have an interest in everybody, you know, having good health care and having justice.
Absolutely.
Globally. So.
Right. Like part of the problem is that maybe it's not the technology itself, but maybe it's the ideology behind the American like rhetoric, right? Which is like, you are an individual. You know, the whole like, we don't think as a collective anymore. It's like, this is my community. This is my tribe. It's, you know, even maybe that's why going back to the whole why people are so disappointed at 47. It's like we carry so much burden on us as individuals of having to attain and become something as a Micah, I have to actualize, you know.
Camera 2 fails. Brief intermission.
So what made you want to start this podcast, Micah? What's your inspiration?
Well, most of my inspiration for wanting to start this podcast was so I didn't have to write a blog. Like, I just genuinely like to spend my time, like, you know, I work full-time jobs. I'm working as a communications manager, and most of my roles outside of the creative world I'm trying to do on the side. And so I just kind of accepted in myself that, like, hey, like my books and everything else is more of just the thing I do on the side. I can't make money from it yet. And I'd rather spend, you know, when I'm at my computer all day for my job doing marketing communications, and I'm writing content for their social media, their website, their things, you know, it could be fulfilling in itself. But when it comes time to like, oh, I'm going to sit down and write a blog, I just realized I don't have a lot of like the mental energy to spend also writing another couple hours on my computer at night. And, you know, I was in college, I was in speech and debate. And so I did a lot of like, you know, we did, even individual events, like doing impromptu speaking, doing prose, you know. And so I just realized I kind of miss the art form of just dialoguing with people as like, not just like, I have a thought and an argument and I'm going to write it out in a very concise blog that people will spend 2-3 minutes reading, and that's all you got their attention for. And then they don't really hear my whole views on that thing. Like I only get them for the short window of time to read something. So then I post it, and then half the time people just read the title and then they're like, you know, hey, I'm just going to critique or, you know, dog on everything you're writing on this one blog post. And it's like, well, now you have to listen to an hour-long podcast before you want to really, like, now you actually have to invest in being a part of my life before you know. And so it's, I don't know, I just realized that part of it's the pandemic. Like, I have a treat by having you here, you know, like I'm not always going to get to have a podcast recording like this where I can have somebody in the space, but I wanted to set up for both, like either to host people here in my house or do it virtually, you know, do it across the way. So whoever, you know, whatever works best for folks. But I just realized that, like at the end of the day, like I want to write books, spend my energy on those things. And then I also like want to be able to talk about the social issues and the things that my blog was trying to like, you know, cover. But rather than focusing all that mental energy on just writing one blog post that's really short and doing series of it, like, hey, I'll just have guests on and we'll have conversations about life, art, activism, spirituality, just kind of cover the array of things that I find interesting, sci-fi, technology, and just make it a point to, at the very least, when only 3 people listen to it or 100 people or whatever, I feel like I grow from these conversations. I get to like, so I thought there's no loss to it, you know, versus writing a blog. It's like, I'm processing my thoughts in a very concise way. It's an exercise in itself, but it's siloed. It's just me doing this thing. So I was like, I want to do something that like gives me the opportunity to engage people on a one-on-one basis.
I love that.
Friends, artists, activists in the area.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did it.
And the theme for Pray for Micah is really just a inside joke with friends. It started off with Sam Schwegler. He's a friend who lives in Tennessee, and he really was using it as like a kind of a fat shaming technique, as like a joke. And he could try to say otherwise, but that's essentially what it was. He was like #pray for Micah, like Micah's got to wait a lot. And it kind of just took. Unfortunate thing about Sam is that he'll just keep a thing going forever, and then it becomes. So I'm kind of like wearing it, kind of like people, oh, I'm queer, I'm just gonna own that title now. Now it's like, yeah, okay, and then it just became a funny joke because then like I legit had past like church friends message me out of the blue during the pandemic.
Yeah.
God knows why. But they were just like, hey, thinking about you, man, praying for you. And it was like, hey, that's fine if you're praying for me. I'm not like going to take that as like necessarily a negative thing. But like, what a random thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, usually that's a connotation of like, you're struggling. And
we're worried about
we're
you.
praying
We're
for
gonna
you,
pray
Micah.
for you, Mike.
So I just kind of realized like people who listen to the show are probably going to be like, yeah, so certain folks will probably like, well, we need to be praying for Micah.
Micah's going off on the deep end.
Micah's going off the deep end. So I just thought, what a better title than that? And then just to kind of, I don't know, for me, I'm trying to, this is like my own spiritual like exploration attempt with this podcast. Like,
yes.
Like, hey, I'm not rejecting like my upbringing, my family, my spiritual walk, like being a Christian back then. I'm trying to own all of that as part of who I am.
Yeah.
And also recognizing that that's not where I was. I'm not where I was back then.
Yeah.
That's not who I am anymore.
Yeah.
You could try to throw labels on it, like I'm a universalist, I'm agnostic, what have you.
I like
but
that.
at the end of the day, like the Pray for Micah theme is still kind of a nod towards the idea of the spiritual, the divine, of prayer. Like, what is meditation? What is prayer?
Yeah.
That intention of inward and outward being. And
I love that. So
Yeah.
the podcast is kind of recording that process, or that, processing those things. I like that. I like the spiritual tone to it too.
And just, and to just poke fun some of like my homeschooled church upbringing, not like, again, like I love it and it made me who I am today, but just, for fun, kicks and grins, like let's just, it's, if you can't laugh at yourself, what is there to do, in life?
This is true. You got to find the humor in it.
Right.
That's cool. Well, I'm so glad that you had me on the Pray for Micah podcast.
Yes. Before you go, you want to do a quick Pray for Micah segment where I share a story with you?
Of course.
So I don't have.
What should we pray for Micah about?
Oh yeah, time for a Pray for Micah story.
The story I want to share with you is a time where I was in youth group, and my pastor came up to me before the service, and he said, Micah, today I'm going to be teaching about love, the theme about love, and how we just kind of use the word love flippantly. I love my girlfriend, I love my car, I love God, and just how much meaning it's lost in us. And so he gives me a Snickers bar, and he says, when I give you the signal, I want you to like jump up, freak out about this like Snickers bar. Just talk about how much you love it, And so sure enough, he's preaching, he gets to the point, he gives me the signal, and I just like jump up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, this Snickers bar. And everybody in the youth group's like, whoa, what's happening? And there's like this little skit unfolding kind of thing. And I'm like, thank God for the Snickers bar. You're so beautiful. I'm like slowly unraveling, and just like, give it to me. I can't wait to get it in my mouth. And I just started like slowly, at first licking it and putting it in my mouth and like kind of doing a back and forth motion. And everybody's laughing. Everyone is roaring in the church. And I'm just thinking they're laughing because I'm being goofy. I'm just like 13, 14-year-old Micah, don't know anything about this stuff. And, pastor goes on to make his point. I sit back down, And after the service is over, everyone's come up to me and is like, "Oh my God, Micah, that was hilarious!" And everyone's just like, "Jesus!" And then someone looked at me and was like, "Man, Micah, you really loved that Snickers, didn't you?" And give me that wink, and I'm like, and then finally, my sister or somebody was like, "Micah, why did you do that?" You realize what you did? Everyone thinks you were just giving that Snickers a blowjob, And I was just like, I didn't realize that's what was. Oh my God, no! And it just suddenly, all the humor was gone. I'm just mortified.
Oh my goodness!
I can't believe that's what everyone thought. So
a good reason to pray for Micah.
We gotta pray for Micah because he gets too excited about Snickers bars apparently.
But I like the innocence of that story, though. It's you were very innocent. You were just enjoying yourself, and the way that it was perceived,
right,
was something other. But I like it's funny because of your innocence.
And that's usually what most of my stories are going to be. It's usually Mike was pretty kind of closed off, pretty sheltered, and so the innocence is the beautiful part about it. Mm-hmm. But it's also just the funny kind of pray for Micah.
I love that. I think it's cool. I feel a lot of good music that I've heard from you. You always have really good music. Trevor Hall. I'd never heard Trevor Hall before you. So that's one of the cool things. Is all of the art and creative things that you're into are pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're here, because we need to make art together, be creative together.
Podcast is art.
Thank you so much for being here, Nika.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Where can we find you online, real quick?
So you can on Facebook, Ayami Nika Renee Seshat, Poet Nika Renee on Instagram, and then Soulcentricity.com for my tea shop.
Perfect. And as always, folks, you can look for Pray for Micah Pod on all of your social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Pray for Micah Pod, and then go to prayformicah.com if you want to access more episodes. And make sure to share, subscribe on Pray for Micah Podcast, all your streaming services.
And most importantly, make sure to pray for Micah.
And make sure you actually pray for me. Don't just do all those things, but also pray for me. Thanks for joining me for the Pray for Micah Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe on this channel and follow me on social media. Pray for Micah Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and yes, even TikTok. We'll see you next time.
You are now re-entering the normal world.